Aggregate function. Overview of aggregate function. Introduce you to most commonly used aggregate function in SQL, including average, count, sum, max, and mean. These are for the average. Calculate the average value of set. For the average, all and distinct expression will be used. These are the samples. Select average salary from employees. Select average distinct salary from employees. Using the distinct, we get the unique records. Count. Return the number of items in a set. For the count also we use all and distinct expression. It is the query, sample query. Select e.department ID, department name, count star from employees E, inner joint departments D on d.department ID is equal to e.department ID group by e.department ID having count star greater than 5, order by count star descending. Here we getting the count that group by e.department ID required for that, and getting the record that having the count greater than 5 and also the descending order of that count. Okay, there is we also use a distinct manager ID. These are the another query. Select count distinct manager ID from employees. Another is sum. Return the sum of all or distinct items of set. It is a query. Select e.department ID, department name, sum, salary from employee E, inner join department D on d.department ID is equal to e.department ID group by e.department ID having sum salary greater than 30,000, order by sum salary descending order. For the max, finding the maximum value in set. Here is the example. Select employee ID, first name, last name, salary from employees where salary is equal to select max salary from employees. That max salary employee, first we select using this subquery, getting the max salary, and on that basis we are getting the employee detail that having the max salary. These are the example. We can use the max function to find the highest salary of employee in each department as follows. Select department ID max salary, department ID max salary from employees group by department ID. We are using the group by department ID, and on that basis we are getting the max salary of that each department ID. Okay. Here is to include department names in the results. We join the employees table with the departments table as follows. For the same query, we add the join to get the department details. So select d.department ID, department name, max salary from employee E, inner join departments D on d.department ID is equal to e.department ID group by e.department ID. Next is mean. Find the minimum value in set. Here is mean. Find the minimum value in set. Here is a query. Get the information of the employee who has the lowest salary. Use the following subquery. Select employee ID, first name, last name, salary from employees where salary is equal to select minimum salary from employees. For the instance, the following subquery returns the employees who have the lowest salary in the each department. Select department ID, minimum salary from employees group by department ID. The result set is not informative as long as we see the names of the department. Therefore, we rewrite this query like this. Select d.department ID, department name, minimum salary from employees E. We join the table inner join departments D on d.department ID is equal to e.department ID group by d.department ID. In that way, we will getting the that department ID, name, and that minimum salary accordingly to the department. Okay. Next section is grouping data. Group by. It has a group by clause or where clause is applied before rows are grouped, where the having clause is applied after the rows are grouped. To solve the order by clause after the group by clause, order by clause is used after the group by clause. Group by clause used first, then order by. SQL group by with minimum, max and average example. Using for the minimum, max and average, group by clause will be used. Okay. The following query returns the minimum, maximum and average salary of the employees in each department. Select department ID, department name, minimum salary, alias name is min salary, max salary, alias name max and also salary, round average salary up to 2 decimals, 2 digits, 2 decimal, and average, alias name is average salary from employees E inner join departments D on D dot department ID is equal to E dot department ID, group by E dot department ID. SQL group by with sum function example. To get the total salary per department, you apply the sum function to the salary column and group employees by the department ID column as follows. It is the query: select E dot department ID, department name, sum salary, and that is it, alias name total salary from employees E inner join departments D on D dot department ID is equal to E dot department ID, group by E dot department ID. Next example is the following statement groups rows with the same value in both department ID and the job ID columns in the same group. The results returns the rows for each this group. Select E dot department ID, department name, E dot job ID, job title, count, employee ID from employees E inner join departments D on D dot department ID is equal to E dot department ID, inner join jobs J on J dot job ID, E dot job ID, group by E dot department ID and E dot job ID. Okay. Next point is SQL group by and distinct. Group by with distinct. If you use group by clause without aggregate function, the group by clause behave like the distinct operator. If we group by and not using any aggregate functions, then it is behave like a distinct unique record will be page. Yes, example: select phone number from employees group by phone number. Same result will be given that query: select distinct phone number from employees. Okay. Next is having clause without group by clause. If you use having clause without group by clause, the having clause behaves like the where clause. Okay. Therefore, having clause will be mostly used with the group by that aggregate functions. Having versus where. The where clause applies the condition to the individual rows before the rows are summarized into the group by clause. However, the having clause applies the condition to the groups after the rows are grouped into the groups. Therefore, it is important to note that the having clause is applied after, whereas the where clause is applied before the group by clause. Okay. Then select manager ID. There is a query: select manager ID, first name, last name, count, employee ID, that count alias name is direct reports from employees where manager ID is not null, group by manager ID, and having direct reports is greater than 5. Where is first, then group by added, and after that after the group by having clause will be added. Okay. Next example is the following statement calculates the sum of salary that the company pays for each department and selects only the departments with the sum of salary between 20,000 and 30,000. Select query: select department ID, sum of the salary from employees table, group by department having sum salary between 20,000 and 30,000. Order by some salary.